Hello everyone. Welcome to our flower training on cosmos. Cosmos are a very beautiful and vibrant summer flower. I grow them every summer in my garden. The butterflies love them, the hummingbirds love them, the bees love them. So it's something that I like to grow because I like to give back to the nature. And in this training, we're going to do 3 different colors. These are the Cosmo flowers, and we're going to do a nice fuchsia color, and we're going to do a white, and this white is going to have a nice deep fuchsia colored center. So we're going to do one in that color also. And then we're going to do a very light, pretty pale pink. And these colors just go very well together. And then we're also going to make buds. These are the buds. These are the Cosmo buds. So we're going to make those. And we're going to start off with making our centers. And these centers are for the Cosmos. And we're going to make several of these to get started. All right, so let's get started on our centers. And this is what a finished center will look like. It's taped down with white tape. We have some aubergine color and some pollen. Okay, for the centers, we're going to need 30 gauge wire, white wire, and we're going to cut it in half. So we have about 7 inches long. We're going to use 3 of them. Or if you have a different number of flowers that you need to make, then by all means you can cut more. I'm going to be making 6 of these, and so we only need 3 wires, and we're going to cut them in half, so we have 6. Okay, so now we're also going to need a heavy-duty white thread. And this is not your typical everyday household thread. You would need to purchase something that's a little bit more heavier. I believe it's called outdoor thread. And you can easily find it at Joann Fabrics or any place that sells different types of thread. All right, to start out with making these centers, you're going to get the thread and you're going to just cup it between your thumb and your 2 fingers, and then you're going to bring these fingers out a little bit as far as you can, and then we're going to wrap okay, then we're going to go around. You know what, let me bring this down a little bit. Then we're going to go around 50 times. So you want to count out 50 times going around. Okay, so I went around 50 times and I'm going to cut it here. Now we're going to do this 3 times because we're going to be making 6 centers, and each one of these loops are going to make 2 centers. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this circle of thread and we're going to twist it into a figure 8. And then once we twist it, and then we're going to bring that twist up. So now we have a nice thick circle of thread. And then what we're going to do is take our one of our 30 gauge wires, and we're going to bring it all the way through. So we have it nice and even sort of here little bit further down. Doesn't have to be completely even. Let's just bring it in half. There we go. All right, so we have it on one end. You want to bring the threads up. Just kind of pull at them so you have a nice even thread here. And then we're going to take our wire and we're going to twist. We're going to twist it around. And twist. It doesn't have to be twisted all the way down, just as far as it holds it in place. And I usually like to twist it several times here, make it a tighter twist up here, and then you can just loosely twist it the rest of the way. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other side. We're going to get one of our wires and push it through and bring it up. And then you want it at the exact opposite end and just bring down that thread so it's nice and tight. And then we're going to twist the wire around and twist it really tight in the beginning. And then you can just loosely thread it down after that. There we go. All right, so now you have two threads here. You have two opposite ends. Before we make a cut here, we're going to tape it. Now we're using white floral tape and it's going to be half width. So I'm going to take a cut. And we're going to put it through our floral tape cutter. This is great it makes it very nice and quick to cut your floral tape. And this will cut it right in half widthwise. You just push it through and there you have it. And then you could just trim off the rest. There we go. Okay, so we have two half-width lengths. All right, so we're going to stretch it out to activate the gumminess. And then we're going to take the one end and just bring it all down. Okay, so we're going to make sure that our thread is nice and tight here. And we're going to bring our floral tape. We're going to start out just below the thread, just to give it an anchor. And then we're going to go up onto our thread. You want to go just a little bit higher than the width of the tape. So we're just going to go a little bit higher, and you want to make sure it's nice and tight. And then we're going to go back down. And you don't want to go far down the wire. That's about far enough. And then we're going to come back up again. And you just want to make sure that you go around a few times so we get this thread nice and snug in the floral tape. Okay, then we're going to go back down. And then right about there, and then we're going to pinch it off. All right, so this end piece, you have a nice tight woven thread here with some floral tape. And then we're going to move over to the other side. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to get our floral tape. You're going to anchor it before you get onto the thread. Pull the thread down. Anchor it in, and then we're going to go up, and you want to make sure that the thread is nice and tight. So it can be a little tricky, so you just have to kind of play with it a little bit. It's almost like making a broom. And then we go a little higher than the width of the tape, and then come back down again, and then go back up again. And you just want to make sure this is nice and tight. And then back down. And right there. Okay, now we can make two different centers out of this. So we're going to cut the center. Okay, now we have all of these little uneven threads, so we're going to trim it up a little bit. And we're actually going to make it smaller. We don't want our center to be that tall, so you want to flatten it out. And then we're going to just trim it. And you just want to trim it until it's nice and even. Okay, then you want to trim it just about to a little under a ½ inch. So I'm going to go a little bit further down. Sometimes you're going to need to spread it out this way, trim it up, and then spread it out another way and trim it up, just so you get a nice even trim. And you'll have a few strays here and there, but that's okay. Flowers are organic. Okay. All right, then we're going to do our next one. And if yours aren't exactly the same size, that's okay, because flowers in nature are not exactly alike. It's like no two people are alike, no two flowers are alike. Now, you want this to be a little bit roughed up. So if you'd like, if your thread is still not rough enough, you can get an emery board and you just rub it back and forth on the emery board. And this helps spread out those threads and gives them a little bit more of a rough look. There, as you can see the difference here. It fluffs them up a little bit. All right, so I'm going to do 4 more of these. Okay, now that we have our 6 centers made, we're going to color them. And we're going to be using aubergine color. And it is a really pretty color. It's kind of a fuchsia with a little bit more purple in it. It's a very nice color. And it's a beautiful cosmos color. So it looks great on cosmos. All right, so we're going to get a brush. And I usually use a squared flat brush for this project. And you get your thread, and you put plenty of color on your brush, and then you just want to brush all the way around. You brush it all the way through. You can lay it down and brush it through, and then turn it. Make sure you get all sides, and you want plenty of color in there. And then we're going to pick it up, and we're going to just brush some in the center also, and we're going to separate the threads. And this helps rough them up a little bit more, gives them more of a center look. And there you go. Okay. And then what we're going to do with our center is add the pollen on it. Okay, the pollen is made out of semolina, and I added some yellow color dust to it, and you mix it all in. And then what we're going to do is get our edible glue and a brush, and we're just going to dab the top with the edible glue. Want a pretty good amount on there. You don't want it too much though, because then it'll start clumping together. Okay, so then we just dip our center in, and you have the pollen pieces. And then what you want to do is separate, let's bring this over here. You want to separate the threads a little bit. Just separate them out, because we're going to add a little bit more edible glue in there to take care of the threads that did not get any of the pollen on it. We're going to dip it again. And there you have a pretty good amount of pollen. Okay, and then you could always tap some off, and then you could just kind of give them a little separation. And then you can try one more dip. And there you go. And then this is going to have to dry overnight. We have our pollen on the top, and we have our aubergine color all over. And this makes a great center. So we're going to set that one to dry. Okay, so I'm going to finish up the rest of my 4, and then we'll come back and we'll start making the petals. Okay, so we're going to be making 3 different colors of flowers. We're going to start out with a very pale pink, and we're going to color the edges of it a little bit darker pink. And then we are also going to do some fuchsia, and so that'll be a really nice pretty color. We're going to mix 2 different colors when we color these. And then we're going to do a white, and we're going to color just the bottom pieces just to give it a nice pop of color in the center. So we're going to set these aside for now. And what we're going to need is a cutter. You can either get a Cosmos cutter or a peanut cutter. And then you're going to need a veiner, flower veiner. I use, this is the Ultimate Petal Veiner flower. This is a Katie Sue Designs one. It's this one right here. And I use this for a variety of flowers, like roses and anything, any kind of flower that has some deep creases in it. I use this for. It's perfect for many different types of flowers. Then you're going to need your groove board, and then you're going to need a foam board and a your petal protector, your flower protector. And then we have 3 different colors of gum paste. We have a very pale pink, and we have a deeper pink and a white. And what I used to make these colors, I used Americolor's Dusty Rose. And with this color, I only put just 1 drop, like maybe 2 drops of color in there, very small drops of color. And then this one, I added a larger drop of color after that. So we have our 3 different colors here. All right, so let's get started on, how about we'll do the light pink first. Now, we're not going to need all of this right away. We're going to do 2 flowers in each color, and each flower has 9 petals. We do 4 inner petals and 5 outer petals. So, so we're going to need quite a few petals. So when that's what I'm making. You don't have to make that many if that's what you're not, if you're not looking to make that many. But that's what I'm going to make because I just want to give a nice variety, full flowers on a cake, Cosmo cake, so it'll look really nice. All right, so I'm going to make several petals, and then I'm going to put them in my flower protector to work on. The more you can do in assembly line fashion, the better. All right, so I'm going to kind of bring this out a little bit so it'll go across all these. I'm not going to use the long one, and we're going to go right across here. All right, so then we are going to get our fondant roller, and we are going to make these super duper thin. You don't want to make them so thin that they're very see-through, but you want to make them thin enough where you can see the veining part through it. And if you have to sprinkle on some cornstarch just to make sure that it's not sticking, we can do that. Oop, it's coming to sticking a little bit. It's starting to get a little thin there. So now we can see the veining through. This one right here, I want to thin it out a little bit more. There we go. All right, now we're going to take our gum paste across. We're going to put a little bit of cornstarch here so it doesn't stick to the table. And you want to bring it out. All right, so then we're going to get our veiner and we're going to put it about halfway down. Now these are very thin flowers, so they could very easily stick. And I'll show you how you can fix that. All right, so they seem to want to be sticking. Now what you could do, if your gum paste is doing this, you can, after you roll this out, before you use the cutter, you can let it sit for a few minutes and let it firm up a little bit. So we're going to get our gum paste. And then if it sticks like that, sometimes you can just easily get your cutter and then just cut it away. My gum paste is very soft, so it's kind of sticking a little bit. So then you want to neaten up the edges. We're going to be thinning this out, so you don't really need to worry about that too much. All right, so I'm going to put some of these petals in here in the protector, and we will work on them as we need them. And to give it an extra protection, I will put them inside a Ziploc bag. All right, let's do a few more. I don't want to do too many ahead of time because then they have a chance of drying out. Let's get this. All right, so then we're rolling these. I'm going to set them down and roll them out fairly thin. If your gum paste is getting a little sticky, you can add a little cornstarch to it. You want to make sure it's fairly thin enough that you can see the center vein in there. Okay, then we're going to take this off and remove this. And then I'm going to put a little bit of cornstarch on the top because it is a soft gum paste and it's sticking a little bit. Here we go. That helps. That really does help. They come out much cleaner that way. All right. And put this away. And we will put all of them away except for one. All right. Now the first thing we want to do is put a floral wire through them. So we're using 30 gauge wire again, and it's half length. And we're going to get out our edible glue, and we're just going to put a little bit of edible glue around the wire. And you want to just guide it up. The petal is thin enough that you can pretty much see where the wire is when it's coming up. And try to keep it on the back side end, but not poking through. There we go. All right. I do want to add some cornstarch to it. It is a little soft still. And then you want to just very gently pinch the bottom so it does stay on the wire. Okay, so then we're going to get our ball tool, the larger side, and we have our petal side, the main side down, and we're going to just give it a thinning at the top and all the way around, just a little thin out the edges. And then we're going to elongate it a little bit. So we're just going to give it a stretch. Just stretch them out just a little bit. Okay, now we're going to vein it, and I'm going to place it into the veiner, and I think I'll use this one. And then you just want to line it up. Line your veiner up and give it a pressing. All right, so this is the back end, and we're going to go back to our foam, and then we're going to get our small ball tool, a smaller one, and we're just going to kind of give it a little ruffle. Now if it sticks, you can take it off your foam pad, add a little bit of cornstarch. It's humid in my shop right now because I was doing some baking earlier. All right, then we're going to give it a little definition. We're going to take our veining tool and we're going to press in. We're going to press in each one of these areas right here. Just give it a little press, little press. And then as we turn it over on the other side, then it gives it a little bit more definition. Now, the inner petals in the cosmos are going to be cupped at the base a little bit because they are going to need to fit nice and even around the center. Okay, so I have here a piece of foam, and I have a variety of paintbrushes. We're not going to be using them as paintbrushes. We're going to be cupping the bottom of the petal over them. This is the inner part right here, and I think I'm going to use a smaller one. And what we're going to do is just lay the bottom part over just a little bit, just right about to about here, no more than a fingernail width. So you want the bottom part to just kind of cup around the paintbrush, just a little bit, not much at all. Okay, so you want to have it cupped like that, and you want it to dry that way because it's going to need, as you can see in one of our flowers below it, the inner petals are going to need to wrap around the center. So you want them to fit snugly. There's going to be 4, and they're going to be at each point, and you want them to fit snugly around the center. So we're drying the inner petals just like that. All right, so we're going to move it up just a tad because we're going to be putting a bunch of these on here. You might want to get several of these. I purchased these in Joann Fabrics. You can find them in, they come in long pieces. They back in the chair cushion section of the store, and you can just cut them up as you need them, and they're great for drying flowers on because some flowers are very delicate. Cosmos are very delicate because they are a very thin petal. All right, so we're going to do 1 or 2 more, and then we're going to make all of our petals. So let's set this guy aside, and let's get out another petal. So there's several steps to do for each petal. Cosmos are very beautiful. They can be a little time consuming, so you want to make sure that you set the time aside to be able to do these. All right, so the first thing you want to do is get your floral wire and put a little bit of edible glue on it, and then you thread the wire in through the petal and trying to stay on this portion here as close to the outside as possible. These are thin petals, so you don't want the wire to be showing through in the front. So just continue on down. There you go. All right, so we have this much, and you want to make sure that you taper it around the wire. And then we're going to get our foam board, and we're going to use the larger bowling tool, and we're going to thin out the edges. And then we're going to elongate the flower just a little bit. You want to elongate it. Okay, and then we're going to use our veiner. And we're going to set it down. Line it up so the veinings are properly lined up here. And then we're going to press the veining. All right, and then we take it off the veiner, and we're going to turn it upside down. This is the front, and this is the back. So now we're going to get our small ball tool, and we're just going to kind of fluff them out, give them a little bit of wave. And then we're going to get our veining tool, and we're just going to press Just press in each area that sticks up. So we're going to do 4. Then we will turn our flower around, and this is what you have. And then now we're going to do our foam again. And we're going to get another brush, another paintbrush. And this is the front of the petal. So let's just turn it around, and you just want it to fit just a little bit around the base. And you want to curve it around the brush. And you can use anything for this. You have a set of, if you have the set of tools, you can use some of the other tools. You can use paintbrushes, you can use pens, whatever works for you to be able to give you that little curl at the base. Now, you don't have to keep it there the entire time it's drying. I mean, you can leave it there for an hour and then take that out. It'll hold its shape because it's very thin, and then you can reuse those brushes for something else. Just so you know, the outer petals, you don't need to do this. For the outer petals, when you get to the point where you are getting ready to curl this over, you don't curl them over. You just make them flat. You dry them flat. So let me, I'll make one just to show you. So we're going to do, for each flower, we're going to do 4 inner petals and 5 outer petals. So I still have to make one more inner petal, but I'm going to show you what to do for the outer petals. All right, so we're going to do the same exact thing for the outer petals. Going to put our wire in. This one had seemed to want to rip a little bit on the base, but that's all right. That can be fixed. All right. Sometimes they will start tearing, since this is very thin, sometimes they will start tearing a little bit, but that can be fixed. It's going to be fixed when you press them into the veiner anyway. All right, so we're going to do the same exact thing. I'm actually going to put a little bit of cornstarch, and we're going to thin it out. We're going to elongate it, just like we did before. And then we're going to put it through our veiner. And press. And bring it up. And this is the back side right here. So we're going to take our small balling tool. Oops. And we're going to give it a little bit of curl wave. It's actually a little soft and moist. So sometimes my gum paste gets a little moist because it's humid. So you just want to give it a little cornstarch. Okay, and then we're going to use our veining tool, and we're going to press, 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 and press. And then turn it over. This is the inner part. And since this is going to be an outer petal, we don't need to have it dry cupped. We just dry it flat. So this is the inside. So we're just going to dry it flat, just like that. All right, so I'm going to finish my flowers, and when we come back, we are going to color them. Okay, now that we have our flower petals made and they are drying, we're going to work on some buds. I'm going to make 6 buds, and they are going to go with the flowers. I do have a couple of them made already, just to show you what the end product would look like. And I do have the centers in the colors that I'm using. I'm using a fuchsia and a pink. It's actually more aubergine than fuchsias, but so I have the center of them are the colors of the cosmos that I'm going to be making. Okay, so these are the buds, And on the size guide, I'm going to make the buds about a number 7 on the size guide. So I did roll one out. We're going to be using we're going to be using white gum paste, and then you put it onto the number 7 size guide, and when you look underneath, it's about 1/3 of the way under and about 2/3 of the way on top. So you want to use a number 7 size guide. So I'm going to roll out 6 number 7s. And I have already preconditioned them. They don't have to be exact. They can be slightly bigger and slightly smaller. That's what makes them more realistic when they're all not just uniform the same size. So this one's a little slightly larger, and that's okay. You want to give your flowers an organic look by maybe altering the size a little bit to make them more realistic. That one's a little bit too big than I want it. All right. We'll do 2 more. I'm going to re-roll them also just to make sure I get a smooth ball. So I'm just doing a rough roll right now, and then once I pull them back out individually, I'm going to, this one's a little bit too small, and then I'll give them another smooth. Still feels a little too small. Yeah, that's all right. That'll be one of my smaller ones. All right, so we're done with the size guide, and we have 6 balls rolled out here. All right, now that we have our balls rolled out, we're going to put them in here for a moment. And in the meantime, we're going to prepare our floral wire. These are 22 gauge green colored floral wire, and we're going to put a hook on them. I cut the floral wire in half so they're about 7 inches long. All right, so you want to make sure that you have hooks on the wires, and we do that because it helps hold the gum paste in place. So you just get your floral wire cut, or your pliers, and you just give them a little hook. All right, now we are ready. We're going to take one out, and we're going to roll it so it's nice and smooth. You want to make sure you have no cracks in it, and then we're going to put a little end on it, make it a little bit of cone for now, and this will help grab the floral wire. All right, so then we're going to get the floral wire, and where the hook is, we're going to put some, not that much, but we're going to put some edible glue onto the end, and then we're going to push the floral wire through. And you want to make sure that you pinch the edge. Now if some of the glue gets on your fingers, just use a little bit of your cornstarch and just pinch it around. Pinch it around, make sure it's completely on. And then you can just kind of turn this around and squeeze off the excess. Okay, and then you can get your gum paste and round it out a little bit. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to get our rocker tool. I call this my rocker tool, and we're going to make 5 indentations. And you want to start all the way at the top, and you go all the way down. You want to make sure they're pretty deep indentations. So that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we have some good deep indentations, as you can see on this one that's finished. And just give it a little bit of shape. Reshape it. And make sure you have your indentations pretty deep so they form nicely. Just like you can see the center here. You may want to bring it deeper. Okay. And then we're just going to round it out a little bit again. And then we're going to let that dry. And I would give it overnight, the same with the petals. Okay, I'm going to make the rest of mine. I have 4 more to make. And then once I make them all, I'm going to let them dry overnight. And then the next step, we are going to color our petals and our buds and get ready to put the flowers together. Okay, now we have finished all of our flower petals, and now we are going to color them. I have white here, and then I have the darker pink here, and then the lighter pink here. So I'm going to show you just a few of each color, and then I'll finish coloring them, and then we will put our flowers together. We're not going to steam them until the flowers are put together, because it's just a lot of steaming for each flower. Plus they're very thin, and you don't want to add too much steam to them because they will wilt. So it's better for these type of flowers to put it together, and then we will steam them afterwards. All right, so let me move this aside. Okay, so we're going to start out with pink, and I have here a flat pink and a more cupped one that we're going to put on the inside petal. And I'm going to be using the color Cosmos because it is a really lovely color. And we are only going to be doing mostly outlining on these flowers. We're going to brush them very lightly. However, we want this color to be mostly on the outline because we want Cosmos to be a very translucent looking flower. These are potato chip thin, so you want to be really careful with them. And then by just doing mostly the outlining, you're giving them a nice translucent look. So you just want to brush on the edges, and you want your brush to be fairly soft. You don't want a firm brush because then you're going to chance breaking the petals. So we're going to take our petals and we're going to go from the outside in, and we're just going to go around the edges. You want to give these flowers a translucent look because Cosmos in real life are fairly translucent. They're a thin petal. And you can just do a light brushing up like that, but you don't want to put too much color in the center. You just want to do the edges and on the underside also. And you just want to be very careful that you don't break them. You want to do very delicate strokes here. These are very delicate flowers. Okay, so as you see, we have mostly just the outline of the flower. Let me just bring this down a little bit more. There we go. All right, so we just have the outline of the flower. I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to move on to the next color. And this is an outer petal because it's flat. It's not cupped down here at all. So we're going to just run the color around the edges, going inward, very gently. Same thing with the other side. And if you end up with too much color, just brush it off. Take the color off your brush and just kind of brush it off. You can brush off and blend it out a little bit. All right, so there we have an inner petal. And this is the pink Cosmo. Once we put it together, it's going to look like this. Okay, so I'm going to put these aside, and then I'm going to show you the darker color. Okay, we have a cupped one and a flat one. Let's move this grouping aside. And we're going to be using aubergine for this flower. This is going to be more of a deeper, almost fuchsia color. So we're going to actually do a little bit more all over color on this one. So I think what I'm going to do is get a larger flush. This brush is going to be used for the white ones, and I will show you in a minute. But for the all over color, we're going to need just a big fluffy brush. And you want to color it all over to give it a nice, beautiful color. I'm going to be using a lot of this color. Okay, then a little bit more color here. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing with the flat one. Now remember, for every flower you do, you're going to be making 4 inner petals and 5 outer petals. So that's a lot of petals. I have 54 petals that I've made because I'm making 6 flowers. All right, and then if you want to brush off excess. All right, so now we're going to put these aside, and I'm going to show you the white. When you're coloring the white, you want to make sure you wash your hands in between. I didn't because I've only done 2 of them, because you don't want too much color on the white. Now the previous flower, the one I just showed you how to do, it's going to end up kind of like this one. Now the white one, we are only going to color the end pieces here because we only want the color to be in the center. And we're going to use aubergine again, and we're just going to give the center some color so it gives the flower some pop. So what we're going to do is get our small flat brush, and we're just going to color maybe up to right about here, maybe about 1/4 of the way up. Remember, you just want it to color in the center, and then you could always just kind of like fluff this color up a little bit so it actually looks like it's blending in with the white. So we'll do the same thing on the back. And you just want it about 1/4 of the way up. Okay, and then we'll go to the next one. And this is a flat one. This is going to be an outside petal. And we're just going to color about 1/4 of the way up. And then you can just kind of blend it. Okay. So these are, when you put these together and you make your flower, you're going to have a burst of color in the center. And like I said here, this is what it'll look like. It'll be a nice burst of color. Okay, now that I have, I showed you a few petals, we are going to color all of our petals and then we will put it all together. Now, before we work on all of our petals, I'm going to show you how to color the buds. And these are buds that I had already made, And as you can see, there's two different color centers. This is a pink one, and this is the aubergine center. And then they also have a little bit of green on the bottom to represent a calyx. So I will show you how to do those. Very, very easy. You pick which color you want to work with. We'll start out with the aubergine. And you just want to get your small flat brush, and then you just color in the center. Let me bring this over a little bit more here. You just give the center some color, and you don't want to color it too much because you want it to represent that the flower is about ready to open. So you just go around, add a little bit of color in between the creases at the very, very top, and then a little bit of color on the top. Now remember, you don't want too much color in there. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to mix prairie green and apple green together. So let me bring this over so you can see. Let me pull all this over so you can see. All right, so I'm going to mix a little bit of prairie green and a little bit of apple green. Apple green's a little bit too light for me for this, and prairie green's a little bit too dark. So I figured I'll take the best of both worlds and I will mix them together. So this is apple green and this is prairie green. And these are both Nicholas Lodge colors. All right, so then we're going to get our brush that we're going to use for the green. Just kind of dab it in to mix the two colors together. And then we're going to take our bud, and we're just going to lightly add some, oops, I don't want it over there. Add some green around the base. You don't want too much. So you want to make sure you dab some of that off. And you just want a little bit around the edges, around the base. Okay, and you can bring it up a little bit so it blends in a little. And there you have your bud. And I'll show you how to do the pink one. Let's do a pink one here. And we'll do the same thing. You don't want to add too much color to these. So you want to take off some of that color and then just dab it through the top. Give it some color. Make it look like the flower is about to open. You can make the color as dark or as light as you want, but you just want to do the top. And brush downward. Brushing downward helps blend it in. And then we're going to take our green, and then we're just going to add green at the base. And then you can blend upward so it all blends in. And there you have a beautiful cosmos bud in pink. All right. So now that I showed you that, I would like you to finish your flowers, coloring your flowers and buds, and I'm going to do mine, and then we're going to come back and put our flowers together. Okay, so all of our flower petals are colored, and now it's time to put everything together. We're going to start out with some green floral tape, just medium green, and get a piece of the floral tape, and we're going to use half width. So I'm getting my floral tape cutter, and we're going to push it through. I have the cutter with the blade right down the center, so that'll just cut the floral tape right in half widthwise. And then we have just a little piece right here that we will cut. All right, now you want to stretch out your floral tape to activate the gumminess. All right, now we're going to take one of our centers and we're going to wrap the floral tape around the baseline here where the center meets the where it meets the color. So I'm going to just wrap it around, and this is to anchor it. You want to get it nice and firm. Just go around a few times. All right, now we're going to the top one, the ones over here on this side are the inner petals, and then the lower ones here are the outer petals. So I'm going to start out with an inner petal, and it has a cupped section, and we're going to bend it out a little bit just to get it anchored in there. And then you want to make sure that you put it right up to the end of the center. And we're going to wrap it nice and tight. You want to wrap it very snug and make sure it's pulled down all the way. And then we're going to put the center flowers, one here, one here, one here, one here. So 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock. All right, so let's take another one, and we're going to bend that one outward. And then we're going to put another one in. And same goes, we're going to anchor it, make sure it's all the way down. You want this part right here to meet right where the floral tape is. So once we get it anchored, we can just kind of move it a little bit. But you just want to get it anchored in there. All right, so now that we have it anchored, you can fix it to where it's supposed to be. And then, oops, I'm kind of bending this floral tape. Then you want to just go around a few times just to make sure that it's secure in there. And then we'll add our next one. And you want to bend it up. And then we're going to add this one in there. And you want to make sure it's cupped right up against the center. So then you want to get your floral tape and bring it up. You want it to be very secure. You want to be careful that your floral tape doesn't twist and start becoming just one little rope. All right, so then we're going to get our fourth petal. And you want to cup that right in there. Get it cupped perfectly in there. When you're first putting it on, it's a little difficult. So once you twist it around a few times, then you can adjust it. And if it's up too high, you can just find which wire it belongs to and pull it downward. And then you bring your floral tape around to secure it. Okay. Now that we have our base flowers, you want to make sure that they are right up there. They are right up against the center. So the best way to do that is just go right up to the base and make sure you get the floral tape all the way around there. Okay, then we're going to add our other petals in there, and you want to add them alternatingly. So you want to put this one in between the other two, and you still bring it down to where it meets the tape. And they will adjust around. So if they move on you, then that's okay. You can adjust them as you're going down, just like this. Okay, then you get your next one, and you put that one in between there. So each outer petal you want to put in between each inner petal. And it gets a little tricky sometimes. There we go. And then you just have to remember where you put your outer petals. So you don't put too many of them around the inner petals. So you want one, this is an inner petal, even though it's kind of cutting close to being an outer petal. So we have an outer petal here, an outer petal here, and then we want one over here. So we're going to put one right here. And notice as you're putting the petals on how it brings that center together. And the center, it just looks like this really gorgeous just burst of color in the center. Okay, so then we have, you want to, as you're going around, you want to make sure you identify the inner petals. So these 4 right here are inner. And we have an outer one here, an outer one here, and an outer one over here. So we're still going to place an outer petal here. And then we're just going to add an extra one in there. So we can put an outer petal over here. And then bring that one around. And then I think I'm going to add an outer petal over here. So even if you're going around, you have an inner petal here in each of these spots, and then if you put one in between the air, that's 4, and then you're going to have another one. So you just kind of get an idea of where you have a little bit of a bare spot, and then add that 5th inner petal there. And then wrap it tightly so you have good support. And you could adjust them after you finish bringing the tape down. And now we're going to start bringing the tape all the way down. And just make sure all your wires are covered. And if you have any floral wire that shows through at all, say a little piece just did not get covered, then all you have to do is get some green color dust and you color it in, dab it with a little bit of color, and it'll blend in. So now we're just going down the wire. Sometimes when you get to this point, it's easier to turn it upside down and spin it. There you go. Now that it's all covered in floral tape, so then we just want to do an adjustment. You go around and you adjust your petals as you would like them, bring them out or bring them in more. And there you have a beautiful Cosmo flower. And as you see, since we only colored the ends, the bottom pieces, it brings a burst of color out of the center. And that's how you can do that. If you just want color in the center of the flower and you don't want it all over, that's how you do it. You just color your flowers just at the base of the flower. And then when you put it all together, it looks like this starburst in the center. All right, so I'm going to put together the rest of my flowers, and the last thing we need to do is steam them. Okay, so all of our flowers are now made, and I'll bring them up to you to show you. We have some very brilliant colors. Aren't they beautiful? Now, you will notice that I don't have my fuchsia colored ones here. So I want to talk to you, before we steam them, I want to talk to you a little bit about troubleshooting. It is very humid and hot right now in my area. And it's in the 90s and it's extremely humid. I mean, it just takes your breath away when you walk outside. So your flower petals may take longer than 24 hours to dry. If it's like that for you, I would give them maybe 3 days. And so what happened was I was putting together my fuchsia colored flowers, and after I got them, they kind of seemed a little soft. And I was just like, I was just wondering, why they're so soft, because I have let them dry over 24 hours. So after putting the flowers together, they weren't closing like these, coming up and closing a little bit. They were just flat out. And I thought, that's not really good, because that's not the look that I'm looking for. So what I did, to make sure that my flowers did not break off because of the weight of having them lay out like that, I turned them upside down to make sure that they were kind of more cupped. And then I put them upside down on a drying rack. I got their wire, and I just looped the wire onto the drying rack, and I'm hanging those two particular flowers on a drying rack. And I'm going to leave them alone about 2 or 3 more days. I'm not going to touch them. I'm not going to steam them. You don't want to steam your flowers if the petals are still soft, because they're gonna break right off of the wire. So I'm just going to let them go. I have them hanging upside down. They're drying, and I'm just going to give them 2 or 3 more days before I give them a steam. And so that is one thing you really want to look for. It depends on your environment. If you're in a very humid environment, you make sure that you give your petals more than 24 hours to dry. And you wouldn't think that, because they are paper thin. I mean, they are like, but I call them potato chip thin, and you would think that they would dry quickly, but they don't. And because they are so thin, the floral wire is you really have to make sure that the flower petals are dried onto the wire and have that connection, have a tight connection. Because if not, if they're soft at all, the wire is going to come out of the flower petal, and then you're going to lose it. And that is why I also say to make sure that you make a few extras of each color you're doing, just in case something like that happens. All right, so we have our finished flowers. They're so lovely. We have the white with the fuchsia colored center, and then we have this beautiful pink with outlined in a darker pink. So we're going to give them just a burst of steam. And we also, excuse me, and we also have the buds. We have fuchsia centered buds, and we have pink centered buds. So we're going to give everything here a steam, just a very light steam. And that is it. I don't want to steam them very long, because they are so thin. They could soften very easily. So these type of petals, you really, really have to treat them very delicately. So that is it. That's all that you need to do for these. And just let the steam dry. And again, if you are steaming them and you are in a humid environment, give them a day for that steam to set. And the steam will actually just pull out that color and bring it out more. So it gives them a nice pop of color. Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed this training in Cosmo flowers. They're beautiful summer flowers, and they look so lovely on a cake. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye for now.